Let's just
I sent my son on a bunch of errands.
nice.
He's he's struggling being back home from college.
What kind of errands?
Well, I had
What
him take
is
something
he?
over to my
He's home from
mom's.
school, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Now we're
And he's
live,
just
by
kind
the
of
way.
he's oh, okay. We are live. All
We
right.
are, I think.
That's amazing. I'm so excited to be live.
I know.
I guess I should
So
hop in.
what kind of errands are
So he,
is he running?
just like go take my car, get it washed, put some gas in it, go by the grocery store, all the things, just to, he's in between the end of freshman year of college and starting like classes this summer. So
Oh, he's actually taking classes this summer.
yeah, yeah,
All
he'll be
right.
taking them online, but still, he's just kind of, but he's in that in between,
Yeah.
like, and he's not used to like being at home. So it's like he likes being home, but also he doesn't, which I totally understand.
I get that, especially after freshman year, right?
Yeah,
So like
yeah, just a different,
being out on your own.
yeah. The other day he said, I don't, there's nothing wrong with like this house. I just don't like being at home. And I was like, okay.
All right. Thanks for your honesty.
So he just goes over, to the grandparents and hangs out at their house.
Nice.
All right. Are we live? Live?
We
You
are
ready?
live. Hey friends.
Hey,
Welcome to the podcast. We're hanging out, recording live, giving you a behind the scenes look of how we just
yeah, this is
talk.
very, very typical of the Church Juice podcast. We,
That's right.
we hit record, we chit chat,
Yeah.
share about just like a little bit of like whatever is going on in the world, in our worlds. And then we dive in, which I'm excited to do today because we are actually live today answering your questions that you've submitted to us and some that we've just heard over the last, few months of like
True.
the church communication space. So, church communications marketing, we're just doing it off the cuff, although we feel like we've got a handle on what we're going to be talking about today. So,
I think so. I hope
yeah,
so.
yeah,
We've yeah, so we obviously get a lot of questions throughout the year. In my engagements with you as like followers and listeners
right.
or watchers, um, but in interactions and Jeanette, of course, has a strong history in church communications and is still in. You work for Texan Church, so
Right.
so just kind of
So,
like
I
that.
talk with church leaders a lot too,
Yeah,
and church
so
communicators.
that church leader, church like technology world. So
Yeah,
we're excited to answer some of your questions today for yeah, just for a few minutes.
yeah, yeah. Let's do this.
All
Do
right.
I go first? Or are you going to ask me? Or I'm going to ask you? Or what? How are we doing this?
So I'd say let's do our regular intro and
Okay.
then we'll dive in.
Just for our buds
Just
over at Minimal
just for consistency.
Media. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Here we go. Do you want me to do the first part? See, I don't even know what's happening.
Yes.
Okay, guys, this is truly behind the scenes because that's what I'm always saying to him. Like, are we ready? Are we doing it? Okay, here we go.
That's true.
All right, here we go. This is the official intro to the live episode, which you're already watching. Here we go. We are recording a live episode today, and we're so excited to spend time answering your church communications and marketing questions live on the air.
That's right. Hey there, church communicator. Welcome to the Church Juice podcast, where we are energizing church communications 1 20-minute episode at a time. Whatever your title or role is at your church, this show gives you the communication and marketing tools, resources, and even community that you need to be successful. I'm Bryan Haley, if we haven't met. I'm the producer of Church Juice, and as always on this podcast, I am joined by my incredible co-host, Jeanette Yates. Hey,
That's
Jeanette.
me.
That is you, in case you forgot. But hey, we were just talking about a few minutes ago, we are answering your questions that you have sent in or asked over the last several weeks. So let's dive in. Is it okay if I ask you the first one?
Yes, I really love
All
this
right.
question. I was
Okay.
hoping I was going to get to answer this one.
So one of our followers in Canada asked, "How do we communicate more without duplicating information?
Yeah. So, first of all, I just want to say I hear you. It can get confusing.
That's right.
So, one of the things that we talk a lot about in church communications is having different channels to communicate to different audiences based on their communication preference. So, what we
Yep.
used to just need to have to get to communicate from the pulpit. Then we printed it on the bulletin so people could take it home. And then we email it to them. And then we put it on social media. And now sometimes we text it to them. There's all these different ways we communicate. Lest I forget, mailers, posters,
True. Yeah.
sandwich boards, all those things. So we have all of these channels of communication. And I think we've talked about many times having communication tiers where if something needs to be communicated to all of the church and maybe even beyond the church. So if it's a community thing that needs to be communicated or community information or event or outreach, we might use all the channels, including contacting the local news and the newspaper and all those things. Versus if it is a very small, I liked, we used to have, I don't know if we still have it in our church. It's not on my radar because I don't get the messages for it because I am not part of the China Painting Club. But at my church, there was one. And so, but it was very small. And so the whole church didn't need to know when the China Painting Club was, just this one small group. And we used just that communication channel that meant the most to them. Okay. So we have all of this happening, but then her question is like, okay, so we have all of these different channels, but I feel like I'm saying the same thing in all of these different channels. I don't want to have to duplicate. How do we do this without duplicating? And so the first thing is, does everything need to be communicated at all those channels? So like I just said, we don't need to communicate about the China Painting Club on, in this case, social media wouldn't do us any good. We don't need to send it out in a big email to everybody. We don't need to announce it from the stage on the weekends. We need to, do the two ways that we want to communicate with these people or that they prefer. However, so you would not be duplicating that in all of those different channels. However, there are other times where you do need to let all of those different channels know the same thing. Like our church, this is just, I love it when like, for Mother's Day. It went, no, for graduation Sunday. It went so well and everybody loved it so much. We decided to change the schedule for the rest of the summer to only have one service. That meant all the communication channels everywhere needed to let people know that we weren't having a 9 o'clock service and an 11. We were going to have a 10 o'clock. So, and so went out on all the channels. So sometimes you will need to duplicate, and that is okay. Know that not everybody is going to get all of those messages. That's one of the reasons you have the multiple channels, is because people prefer different things. But sometimes you can just target the information or the communication to the appropriate channel.
Yeah, I would add that, I guess going along with what you said, like omni-channel communicating through different channels is important, and that should be part of your overall communication strategy, of course. But knowing, like you were talking about the tiers, so knowing which tier something falls in, and we can add a link to this in the video description. But knowing what tiers, knowing your audience, if you have personas, like that's an easy way to help kind of just create these like filtering factors of how you communicate effectively. But I would also say if you're duplicating a lot of information, maybe you just need to evaluate the tools that you are using.
Yes.
Maybe you're using too many tools, or maybe they aren't unique, right? So maybe your Facebook audience is the identical audience as your Instagram audience or your texting audience or something.
Right.
Well, then you don't need to have both of those. So evaluate your channels and figure out what's worthwhile to keep, what actually needs to be duplicated, what can be unique for each channel, those kinds of things I think is important too. And then, like I was saying, maybe you don't need all of those tools.
Mm-hmm.
Simplify. If
Yeah.
you're using too many tools, simplify. Get rid of them. If it's not creating unique value to your audience, then you probably don't need it.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads into our next question,
I
which
know.
I'll let you ask.
Yeah. So our next question comes from Katie, and she says, "How can we consolidate our communication tools?" So let's say you've evaluated and you realize that you do need to simplify, but now you've got to choose which
Yeah.
ones to get rid of and which ones to keep. So how do we do that? What are
Yeah,
your
I think
thoughts?
there's a lot of ways to evaluate which tools to keep and which to get rid of. I would look at the analytics that you have, if that's
Mm-hmm.
something that you have available. How are people engaging with this medium or this tool? What does it duplicate from other tools? So what I mean by that is how is it unique or not
Right.
unique? Evaluating which tools you're using, looking at what makes them unique, why you should keep them, what unique value that tool has, and if it doesn't have anything, then it
Mm-hmm.
should be on the chopping block.
Yeah.
And then I would also say that for something like social media, if you're
Yes.
not going to use, let's say, Twitter anymore, pin a tweet that
Yes.
says, we're not here anymore. Here's where you
This is
can
our
find us.
strategy.
Right. But I would not give up your social media, your handle.
Handle,
If
right.
you have something that's consistent, keep it. Keep that live. Don't just archive or delete your profile, but point people to where they can find you.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, for like technology tools, if you're trying to consolidate, I would work toward tools that integrate with one another. So your email marketing tool integrates with your church database, which integrates with I don't know, whatever else. But find tools that work and communicate to each other, because then you're duplicating even less, and you have one kind of central place of information, or
Right.
like place of truth, really. So yeah,
Well, and I will say there's a balance between finding a tool that integrates with other tools and then finding a tool that's like a one-stop shop.
yeah, that's true.
And there's pros and cons to all those things. So that's not what this is about. However,
Yeah,
sometimes a tool keeps adding different things. And, you know, I'm an early adopter kind of person. So if a tool that I love says, hey, now you can also do blah, 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 I'm going to try that out and check it out and see how it's going and see if it helps me before I get rid of anything else. So I may already have a tool that does this other thing. I'm going to check out this tool that I like, but I'm not going to get rid of the other thing. However, a lot of times when people just start adding, like, now we do this, now we do this, now we do this, it kind of it runs the risk of making like none of the tools work very well. So, finding that line between, well, this tool can do everything, but can it do it well? Can
mm-hmm.
it do what you need well? And it
Yep,
may, and that's wonderful, but don't don't automatically assume, because, and that's why I like what you said, is finding tools that integrate with each other. Because if a tool does something very well and it integrates with another tool that does another thing very well, that's your best.
right.
That's the best of both worlds.
Yeah, often if it's a all-in-one solution, it probably doesn't do everything well, or
Right.
the best, right?
Yeah. I
So
remember
finding
there
tools
was
that
a
work together is important.
I remember that there was a famous email platform that started doing all the other things, and it got to be so confusing about what kind of you know product they were offering.
Mm,
And they figured that all out, and it's kind of they've kind of gotten back on track a little bit, but it was a little bit hard. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm doing my emails and now I got a website and now I can do whatever. It's
yeah,
like, what? I just want to send emails.
right. Yeah,
So,
and honestly, you see that a lot with. I'm probably going to get some pushback or some heat for this, but you see that a lot with church communication tools
yeah.
or databases.
Mm-hmm.
There used to be a ton of options for for church management solutions, but they've all either been, a lot of them have either grown where the company wanted to become an all-in-one solution for everything you can imagine, or they bought other companies, and so now it's kind of piecemeal together, or whatever. But there's a lot less of, just kind of those, I don't know, those integrated type tools, and people are trying to become the one-stop shop, which doesn't always work.
All in one tool. I need that because I'm tired of having all these logins and I'm tired of trying to figure out all new systems. I just want you to know we understand.
For sure.
We know that in many, many churches, you're frazzled. You are trying to figure out all the different communications, and the idea of like literally logging in and being able to do everything you need is very appealing. And if you can do everything you need with one of those tools, that's great. However, like we were saying, sometimes
Right.
you think you can and you can't. So just be prepared. So when you're consolidating your communication tools, find the tool that works best for you. Try to find something that can integrate with other systems. And if it's not effective, ditch it. Choose
Yep.
something else.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. Next question comes from Jane. What can we do to improve our Google business listing?
Jane, that's a doozy. We were both like, who's going to take this one? Another little behind the scenes there, guys. We were, so I mean, I guess just the basics for some people, like they might even be like, wait, we're supposed to have a Google business listing.
Yeah.
So just so you know, when you go to Google your church, if you don't own or have control over, I don't know what they call it, but it's like
Yeah.
something like
Manage.
managing. If you Google your church and it pulls up and it's like, hey, do you own this business? Is this yours? Chances are you do not have it connected to anything. And so
Right.
you want to become the owner of that on Google.
Yep.
And then, once you do that and you have your hours, your website, all of these things, I mean, that automatically is going to help you a little bit. And then there's other tools, and I just have a couple because I don't have to do this for my job anymore, so I haven't kept up on all the things. But I do remember, the photos on there, and anybody who gives you a Google review is on there, and so you can see that and respond to those, interact. And then, of course, we always tried to share any blog post that we had on our blog, on our website. We also shared it on Google. So there's just the basics like that. Any photos we uploaded, we made sure to tag them over there as well. So that's the basics. Like that's
Yeah.
what I remember from when I was working at my church. But I'm sure things have changed since then because it's been about 4 years.
I mean, a little bit, but not a ton. So I think you're absolutely right. If you aren't managing or you don't own your Google or your Bing business
Yes.
listing, you need to claim it. You'll have to go through like a verification process. They'll probably mail you
I was
something
going to
to
say
make
they'll
sure
mail
like
it.
you're the owner. But the fact is that then you can update, and it's another way that you can communicate with people who are searching for your church or searching for churches in your area. So once you have ownership or you're managing that listing, which should be your physical address
Mm-hmm.
essentially, then you can, like you were just saying, you can make posts just like you would on social media. So even if you use a tool like Buffer or some of those scheduling tools for social media, you
Yes.
can schedule posts to go to Google, where it will add that. So if you have like a upcoming event that you want people to be aware of or something community centric, those are great ways to get people to see that a little bit more. And if they're searching for those kinds of items or searching for things in your area, that's a great way for that to pop up. Another thing that I would say is to make sure that it's always up to date. If your office is closed for
Yes.
something, add it to your Google listing. Just make sure that everything is up to date with holiday hours, with office hours, with what accessibility your building has, those kinds of things. That's all important to continue to add to your listing as well. You
And
can
one thing
ask
to note
for,
about
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, one thing to note about that, and it just reminded me when you said that, when you talk about your hours, like think about when your campus is open.
Hmm,
Sometimes churches will just have we're open on Sundays. That's
right,
not really true. There's
right.
somebody probably there during the week. I know at least in my area, church plant on Sundays. And then in that case, you would need to let them know when you're there versus when you're not. But, for my church, we need to make sure that people know that they can come between these hours, Monday through Friday, and also receive prayer, um, you know, services, things like
Yeah,
that going on. So just make sure that is updated. And I think Google and both Facebook does this too. Like if there's a holiday or something, it'll say, "Are you going to be open? If
right.
not, update your thing." And so it'll prompt you to do that, which is kind of nice because
Yeah,
forget,
yeah.
especially
Google will
us church
send
communicators that
you,
are always working. So it
right.
doesn't matter.
Google will send you email like
Yeah.
tips and reminders, things like that. So that's good.
Yeah.
I would also suggest that you, as part of just like your overall communication strategy, make sure that you're adding photos every month or every quarter, or however often that you take photos for like events and Sundays and things like that. Making those fresh and updated just helps people see that the church is actually still there and relevant, and gives them an idea, just like websites on your or photos on your website. It gives people an idea of what to expect.
That's right.
And you can also ask for ratings from your members, through email or whatever. Do things like that too. So yeah.
We did
Any
better than
other?
I thought we were going to do on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Um, yeah, I'll ask this one.
Okay.
So our next question: how do you get people to want to connect with you? So somebody's in your building, you have, hey, join us for this, you're invited to coffee hour with the pastor,
Right.
or we would love for you to fill out the connection card. But many churches struggle to get people to make that next step. That
Right.
we show up on Sunday or we watch the live stream, but we can't actually get their contact information, or we can't get them to make that next step. So how do you get people to even want to connect with you in that next step?
Yeah, so this is a great question. And of course, Brian, this is something that I answer questions about all the time in my role because that's one of the things that we do over at Texan Church. But
Yeah.
in general, one of the, best practices across the board, whether you're using a paper connection card or a digital one, whether you're using social media or mailing flyers in the mail,
Mm-hmm.
when you're trying to communicate for someone to take a next step, you want it to be you want to be clear to this person why this next step would benefit them.
Yeah.
Is it fill out the connection card? Is it come to this event? Is it attend a church service? Sign up for a small group? Volunteer? Why is that good for me? And I know a lot of times, especially those of us who have been in the church space for so long, I grew up in the church. So to me, it's like, I mean, why wouldn't you? Of course, it's a good thing. Church is a good thing because Jesus loves me. Those are all the reasons.
Yeah.
But when someone is not really connected with a church, or maybe hasn't been for a long time, or maybe has, pulled away from the church for whatever reason, when you're trying to bring them back in or invite them to come back in, you want to think about, and we talk about this a lot, like, what are people's, what need is this going to solve,
To
or
meet.
what
Yeah.
problem is this going to solve? What need is this going to take care of? And, a lot of times we say, well, it's going to introduce them to Jesus. Yes, but we might have to kind of take a step back and talk about the felt need or the perceived need versus what we all need.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I would just encourage to say, like, encourage you to whatever that next step is: first time guest, volunteering, outreach event, whatever that next step is. Why would doing this next step, why would taking this next step benefit me? What would it do for me? How will it help me? If you can answer that question in your copy of your communication, that's going to be your best practice, your best way of getting people to take that next step.
Yeah, that's good. Um, yeah, why do they want to connect with you, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are, I think you hit the nail right on the head.
And
What,
you can't say, like, connect with us,
yep,
but, if you want to get connected, then do this.
yep.
Like, what does that
Um,
mean, get connected? Like,
yeah, what value are you providing to
yeah,
the
what
person,
value would
right?
it be for me to get connected with
Right.
you? Yeah.
Or even if you're looking for, as a church, if you're trying to get someone's contact information, well, why do I trust you with
Right.
that information? Or what is the value to me? And getting church announcements in an email every week is probably not the right answer. So providing something
Why
that
why
is
why are those announcements so important to me?
right. So for someone who is very new to your church, they have attended once, twice, whatever, however many times, but they show up on Sunday or whenever, and that is their connection to the church. Then you need to foster that relationship and make sure that you are providing something that is valuable to that person where they're at. And we need to get beyond the feeling that we are the answer, and that we have the answers, and that's what people are looking for. That may be true, but they probably don't know it right away.
Yeah.
And so we need to start with where they're at. Um,
Side
so
note,
yeah, yeah,
if you want people to sign up for your communications, decide at the last minute to switch to a combined service and then be there on the Sunday when people show up early or late. And then you could say, hey, you must not be signed up for the.
that sounds like a church version of clickbait, like in
Yeah,
real
I
life clickbait.
know. But no, it's the opposite of clickbait because they didn't get anything because they weren't signed up.
All right, all right. There's true, but
Yeah.
that seems
But
pretty.
it's like bait and switch. I don't know. You're
Yeah,
right. Something with
yeah, yeah,
bait.
yeah.
But anyway, don't do
Yep.
that. That was a joke. Don't shame people into signing up for your texts and emails.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Let me pull up my document real quick because I was going to talk about the next couple episodes on the podcast, and I am drawing a blank on actually what we have
Oh my goodness.
on the
This is
in the
breaking
pipeline.
news.
So, oh yeah, 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 yeah. So next week we have a podcast episode where we are touching on the topic of artificial intelligence, which is
Yes.
it's a really good discussion. We invited Kenny Jang to come. You may know him from Church Tech Today or from Church Communications. Kenny's involved in a lot of things, but the last few months he has spent a lot of time learning how to adapt or how to involve AI with church and church communications.
Yes.
So if you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe. If you get podcasts, through Spotify or whatever, subscribe to us there as well. But next week we talk about AI in the church. The episode after that, we actually talk about self-care. And so
My
we talk
favorite.
about, as we head into the summer, some good ways that we can practice care for ourselves as leaders, as communicators, as Christians, and just as humans. So that's the next two
Yes.
episodes. We have a whole bunch more coming out too, but make sure that you hit subscribe. We would love to hear from you as well. If you're not part of our Church Juice Facebook group, you can join that by going to churchjuice.com/podcast, and you'll find it in the show notes on that page. You can also email us if you have additional questions or you want to follow up with anything that we talked about today. Send me an email, Bryan, B-R-Y, don't put an I in there, B-R-Y-A-N, at churchjuice.com. I'm always happy to answer questions, meet with people, serve your church however I can. But that is a wrap on today's show.
We did
So
it.
we did it. Make sure that you, again, subscribe, turn on notifications. We don't want you to miss any future episodes. And hey, since you're watching, we would love it if you left us a review too. That just helps other church communicators, church leaders find the podcast. So it would mean a lot if you took just a few seconds today to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
On behalf of Church Juice and everyone at Reframe Ministries, thanks for watching. We will see you next week.
That's right. Bye, friends. We did it.
Okay.